Greetings everyone, thank you for coming to my channel. In this video you'll be learning about participle prepositions. And before I get started, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First and foremost, welcome to the new subscribers. I'm happy to have you guys and thank you for your support. And I wanted to thank everyone who's been watching my videos, who's been liking my videos and just showing support. I really appreciate you guys. And like I've been saying in the past few videos, feel free to leave feedback. That can be positive feedback or negative feedback or both, as long as the negative feedback is respectful. And yeah, I'm just so thankful and happy to have you guys, so thank you so much. Okay, now let's get started with the video. For starters, participle prepositions are participles, which are verbs that usually end in ing or ed, that function as prepositions. So participles are a whole thing, and I also have a video on participles, so feel free to check that out. Participles are verbs, but they can also act as adjectives, and they have multiple uses. There's also present participles and past participles and participles being used in the passive voice. But yeah, like I said, I have a whole video on that, so feel free to check out that video if you want to know more about participles. But yeah, for the sake of this video, just know that participle prepositions are participles that act as prepositions. So these are the participle prepositions I'll be discussing in this video: regarding, including, considering, excluding, during, assuming, and following. So first we have regarding, which means in reference to. So our first example says, I received an email regarding my recent job offer. You could also say, I received an email in reference to my recent job offer, or you could say, I received an email about my recent job offer. Our second example says, regarding our recent agreement, we should make sure we're still on the same page. Or we could say, in reference to our recent agreement, we should make sure we're still on the same page. Or you could flip the sentence and say, we should make sure we're still on the same page about our recent agreement. Our last example says, I have something to talk to you about regarding your son's behavior. Or you could say, I have something to talk to you about in reference to your son's behavior. Next, we have including, which means part of a larger group. So our first example says, take off all of your jewelry, including your earrings. So to me, including kind of puts emphasis on a certain thing, because in all of these sentences, you don't have to include including. For example, if I said take off all of your jewelry, that would make sense. But if I say take off all of your jewelry, including your earrings, that's kind of placing emphasis on your earrings. Or another way of saying it would be, your earrings are a part of that larger group, and the larger group would be jewelry. That's one of those things in English that's kind of silly, but I don't make the rules. So our second example says, 4 people attended my graduation, including my big sister. So we're kind of just placing emphasis on the fact that my sister attended my graduation. And our last example says, I made your favorite sweets for dessert, including banana bread. So it's kind of placing emphasis on the fact that I made banana bread. Next, we have considering, which means taking into account. Our first example says, considering my recent argument with my brother, I think he's still mad at me. Our second example says, considering today's cold weather, I think I'll just stay inside. And our third example says, he turned out very successful considering everything he's been through. And I feel like when you use considering, there's always a cause and an effect. Like in the first example, the cause is my recent argument with my brother, and the effect is I think he's still mad at me. In the second example, the cause is today's cold weather, and the effect is I'll just stay inside. And for our last example, the cause will be everything he's been through, and the effect would be he turned out very successful. Next, we have excluding, which means not including. Our first example says, I'm inviting all of my siblings to my birthday party, excluding my youngest brother. So that means I'm inviting all of my siblings except my youngest brother. Our second example says the gym is open every day, excluding holidays. So that means the gym is open every day except for holidays. And our last example says, I like every color of the rainbow, excluding orange. So that means I like every color of the rainbow except orange. So excluding is the formal version of except. Next we have during, which means while something was happening. Our first example says, my son was fooling around during the whole movie. So that just means while the movie was playing, my son was fooling around. Our second example says, I wasn't paying attention during the presentation. So this just means while the presentation was happening, I wasn't paying attention. And our third example says, he was on his phone during the concert. So this just means while the concert was happening, he was on his phone. Next, we have assuming, which means if. So our first example says, assuming there will be several guests at our house, I will cook a big dinner. You could also say, if there will be several guests at our house, I will cook a big dinner. But nobody really says that, so it sounds better if you say, assuming there will be several guests at our house, I will cook a big dinner. Our second example says, I will buy me a new car next year, assuming I can afford it. You could also say, I will buy me a new car next year if I can afford it. That actually makes sense if you replace assuming with if. Not that the other example didn't make sense, it just sounded better if you used assuming. And our last example says, I will be at work on time, assuming there isn't a bunch of traffic. And you could also say, I will be at work on time if there isn't a bunch of traffic. Last, we have following, which means after. Our first example says, following the divorce agreement, both parties signed the paperwork. Or you could say, after the divorce agreement, both parties signed the paperwork. Our second example says, he had several injuries following the car accident. Or you could say, he had several injuries after the car accident. Our last example says, following the birth of her son, she was very tired. Or you could say, after the birth of her son, she was very tired. That concludes our video. Thank you guys for coming. I hope you found this video informative. If you did find this video informative, please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, or all of the above, and I'll see you next time.